Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, President and CEO of SSM Health, Laura Kaiser. Hey, what you drinking? You know, if you were just running an organization as large as the one that you're running, if that were your only job, I would be just impressed by that alone. But healthcare has become politicized. And I just didn't anticipate 15, 20 years ago when I first got exposed to SSM, I wouldn't have anticipated that healthcare would have become such a political volleyball. How do you balance running an organization, leading an organization, delivering the results that you've got to deliver in order to be in that seat long term? How do you balance that with the politics that swirl around the decisions that you have to make? That's got to make your job more complicated. It might make it more fun, but it's got to make it more complicated. How do you balance all of that?
I have a responsibility to use my voice as a leader, and I am a large voice for SSM Health, and everyone that works here has a voice as well. But I'm asked to represent all of us on different occasions. And that means speaking not just locally, but regionally and nationally. And because the U.S. health system has a lot of work to do to ensure that it's accessible, affordable, high quality for everyone now and in the future. You're right. Advocacy has taken a higher profile in healthcare because it is a public good of sorts. And I don't want to go all political about whether or not it's a right or a privilege. I have my own viewpoint on that. And it guides how I and our organization weighs in. But I think it's a responsibility that we have as a healthcare organization and really as citizens. We need to weigh in and be active to advocate for the things that are important.
Yeah, well, I mean, not only are you one of the key voices in healthcare, certainly in the United States, you're one of the 100 most influential people in healthcare. I mean, that's pretty significant. I mean, if someone is sitting in a national seat and they're looking to get a pulse on what's needed in healthcare, you're going to be on the list, if not on a shorter list of people that they reach out to understand what they need to understand. And that's a huge responsibility. I love the way you think about your work as a ministry and really kind of a calling. I had this conversation with a couple of my guests. How can you tell, or how can you help someone determine their calling? Because it's easy to know our job, right? It's easy to know, I do this thing, I get compensation or I get a paycheck, and so this is my job. It's easier to understand that. It's not always easy to understand my calling, and I could be executing and living my calling on my job, or I might not be. How can you get a sense as to what your calling is, and how can others do that?
It's a really important question. I remember when I was a teenager with, all the angst of youth, wondering what was my purpose? And I got really stuck on it, thinking about it for a little while. And I also remember, I can't wait to have opinions. And now I have too many opinions. So anyway, but I finally landed on, for me, it came to me one day that the purpose of my life is to pass it on. And then I was good. I understood that I was wired to be of service, et cetera. And the question was then, where am I going to apply that? And for me, it's spending some time in self-introspection, having people that can be sounding boards for you, because you may not have the ability to wade through all of that on your own. And the book, What Color is Your Parachute, is an oldie but goodie. And so I think it's those things. And then the way that I view calling is something that is a purpose and something that is bigger than you. And so if you're able to connect that to your work where you spend so much time, it's a gift. And my guess is that you're going to be even more inspired to lean in and work all the harder because it's something bigger than you. So it's about some self work and then talking with other people that can help unlock that for you if you haven't been able to discover that yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've done that work. That actually, that kind of work is at the foundation of what I do as an executive coach, but also as a leadership facilitator. I often ask all of my clients to focus on creating their leadership platform. And just as a politician will often have a political platform where you can go to a website and see what they believe in and see what they promised that they would do if they were approved for the position or the money or the budget, or you put them in the office. I believe every leader should have a leadership platform. And for me, it really comes down to answering 5 questions. And so here comes the self-reflection, the guided self-reflection that you talked about. That first question is, who are you? So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your tendencies? But who are you? If you were a company, this would be your brand identity statement. The second question is, why are you here? And by why are you here, I'm talking about why are you here on this planet? And you're talking about purpose. So this would be your purpose statement. If you were a company, this would be your mission statement. But we need to answer that question, why are you here? The third question is, where are you going? And what's your vision for the world? What's your vision for your community? What's your vision for whatever group you're part of? If you were a company or an organization, this would be your vision statement. What's the world that you're creating, the version of the world that you're committed to creating? The fourth question is, who's going with you? How can you identify like-minded people who are on the same path? They might not be in the same place, but they're on the same path. You can tell. They might be farther down the road and therefore a great person for you to develop and nurture as a mentor. They could be behind you and therefore someone that you might want to mentor. They could be alongside of you struggling with the exact same. They don't have any more information. They got all the same questions. They got a few more questions than you do, maybe, but you can tell they're struggling with the same questions and therefore you're on the same path. And then the last question, and a lot of my clients tell me that this is probably the toughest question to answer, and that is, how can anyone tell your answers to the first 4 questions based on your behaviors and how you show up? And I love the way Xavier Williams explained this when he was on the podcast. He said, basically, those are your receipts. Show me the receipts for your answers. And that's at the cornerstone of the work that I do. And I hear you talk about self-reflection, and you've talked about that a lot. Do you have a structured process for guiding some of the leaders in your organization through that self-reflection work? Or is that something that you just kind of get to organically as you meet with them and as they watch you?
So we have, before someone joins SSM Health in a leadership position, we work with an outside firm that does an assessment, just to give some insight, and we share that with the individual. And then it just is part of the foundation of discovery. And then we have coaching situations sometimes. And I remember the first time that I had a coach, I thought, when I was asked if I wanted one, I thought, what am I not doing that you need me to do? Because I didn't
Exactly.
understand, what a value a coach would be. I just thought it was more corrective. And then I read something somewhere along the line that talked about, if professional athletes have coaches, why don't executives? That really rang true for me. So we have coaches. We also annual goals that we have for the organization, and then we have individual goals. And for the people that I work directly with, I also have added a personal goal for them that they self-select. And I have a lens of 5 facets of well-being around your emotional health, your spiritual health, your physical health, intellectually. And so the 5, if you are a marathon runner and you give me your personal goal to run a marathon in X time, I reject it because you already have that in hand. Let's go to one of those 5 spokes where you have opportunity for additional growth and pick something that's actually going to be outside of your normal routine, because that's when the growth can really happen. So that's part of it as well. So it's just a mixture of some one-on-one formal and informal dialogue, perhaps a coach. We also offer ongoing leadership development on salient topics. Change management is the one that we're really focused on this year, that's broader for all leaders across the organization.
Yeah, and I love the way obviously I love your understanding and explanation of the value of an executive coach because I'm going to tell you I went through that same work very very early on. Someone suggested that I get an executive coach specifically when I was coming out of business school. And I was like, what are you talking about? I can't be screwing up that bad because you gave me this experience because you said I was doing a good job. I couldn't have screwed it up over the past 2 years, right? And now today I am an executive coach, and people often think, wow, your background is in consumer packaged goods. How in the world can you help me in healthcare? You don't have that experience. And one of the things that I have really come to appreciate is that it's a different skill. Coaching is a different skill than being the executive. And a talented coach will draw the insights out of the executive rather than trying to put the insights into the executive. Talk a little bit about your experience with working with someone, whether they had experience in healthcare or not, but working with someone as a thinking partner to help you work through whatever major decisions were on your desk at the time.
I've had a few different coaches. One I worked with for a decade, and another that I worked with for about a year and a half. And comparing and contrasting, the one that I worked with for more than a decade was very deep in what I would say close to being an empath, not just with me, but with others, and really actually went further into the organization and just was able to discern what the ethos of the organization was, who I was, what my style was. And I've not heard that description before about having someone that draws the insights from you that may not be self-apparent, was quite good at that. And then I switched just by virtue of some scheduling and things to the next person I worked with who was completely different, who, and neither person had healthcare experience, I should add. This person was, and both were very good listeners, but the second person had a style that would listen, but would at some point kind of cut me off to have me sum up and then would bottom line me. And it was disconcerting because I had just worked with an empath for, a number of years. And it was really startling to me and also very valuable because we all react to different stimuli coming our way. And that was sort of disconcerting, especially in an organization, especially a not-for-profit Catholic health ministry that's super nice and kind, who would just kind of bottom line me. It caught my attention and was very valuable. So I think it's about the fit with the coach and the leader, that there has to be trust, there has to be authenticity and vulnerability. This person wishes you well, but there has to be a good synergistic fit for that to happen quickly, because time is really the thing that you have the least of. And so you want to make the most of it.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And that's part of the thing that I enjoy the most about what we do here. I want to bring this back to your St. Louis roots because when I asked you about, hey, look, do you even like jazz? I mean, you went for like the master St. Louis jazz dude, Mr. David Sanborn. So talk a little bit about what is it that David Sanborn was able to do over because he's become one of those Mount Rushmore type dudes when it comes to jazz. What is it? Describe what it is to listen to or to watch David Sanborn.
So I became aware of him back when I was in graduate school. So that was, decades ago. And I hadn't had a lot of exposure to jazz. I grew up in a house full of classical music and opera, and I liked music of all kinds. And so, but jazz was a little unfamiliar to me. And so one of my classmates introduced me to David Sanborn, and I play the piano badly, but I understand how hard it is to play an instrument. And I know nothing about playing a saxophone, but and rest his soul, magic, just magic with his ability to play these beautiful songs that, with all due respect to jazz, sometimes I can't follow jazz. I can't, or blues. I'm like, I don't hear the melody because I like melody. And he would play in such a way that you could follow the story of the songs that he was playing. And when I would watch him, and you could see the respect from his fellow performers and musicians, you could see that he was also having a blast when he was playing. And so he and his instrument were the same. That was just one of the ways he expressed himself. So I would just call it poetry, I guess, in a word. Really, really wonderful. And I still listen to him to this day. And he could really mix it up with something like Tintin, which was just really like jamming, or something like The Dream, which is really more melodious and just lovely. So he's just the best. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, as I was listening to you talk about David Sanborn, I couldn't help but hear the connection to principles and leadership. And I'm curious if you would tie those same descriptions to what it takes to be an effective leader. You talked about how he was able to communicate the melody of his message, that he was obviously having a blast in what he was doing. He had the respect of others that he was playing with. And I just, again, I could hear a lot of those same phrases being used to describe what it takes to be in a significant leadership role. I wonder what other connections, because I don't even want to say that I play the piano. I've seen and I appreciate a piano. I like to describe myself as I'm a professional music listener. But what connections can you make between what it takes to be an incredible musician like a David Sanborn, and how that might relate to what it takes to be an effective leader?
Well, I think you have to be drawn to your work. So it has to be something that you really enjoy and that you love, because that passion's going to seep through. I think you have to be a great student, a lifelong learner. Years ago, I just came across something I read about, sort of, you remember the Karate Kid where there was the grasshopper in training? So the grasshopper, and at some point you can move to become an artist, and at some point you're a master. I think that's a lifelong journey on any subject, including leadership and being a musician, but kind of to get to the master craft level. And so I would say lifelong learner, being curious, bringing your best all the time, and knowing some days you're not, you're going to hit some bad notes, and then you get back up and you do it again. Tiger Woods, amazing and so gifted. I think, hadn't he like practiced 10,000 hours, and wasn't there the Malcolm Gladwell book about, doing things repetitively? You have to do that in leadership, and you have to apply it in an industry that continues to evolve. So some of the old stuff feels new because it's in a different environment.
Yeah, you're reminding me of something that I heard. I think it was basketball player Gilbert Arenas, retired basketball player Gilbert Arenas, and he said to be extraordinary, you've got to do the ordinary extra. So to be extraordinary, you got to do the ordinary extra, because it's typically not some mystical, magical thing that you are endowed with. There are some occasions where there's some mystical magic, fairy dust, but usually it's what's that thing that is at the core of who I have to be, and how do I get better at being that? And so I love the way you're bringing that in. I would really love to get more insight into who are some of the people that you would say are on your invisible board of directors. Who are some of the people that you think about from time to time as you are faced with tough decisions? Are there folks who you anticipate, how might this person approach what I'm facing?
Yeah, and maybe if I have this funny theory that sometimes if I say something loud enough and just put it out into the universe, sometimes it happens. So maybe this will happen. It'll be awesome. Anyway, but well, first and foremost, I'm a faith-based person, and so the power of prayer should never be underestimated. And so I have regular conversations with God, and that's important, especially when I've got something that's really weighty. I just need, and I have a practice where if it's a really hefty decision that needs discernment, I will sleep on it after prayer and just kind of, so that's an always absolute go-to. I wish my dad was still on this earth. He was just a wonderful sounding board for me. So I would bring him back for my invisible board. I talk with him, but I can't hear him as well. But his voice is still in my head. I would bring Phil Jackson onto my board because I think he was an amazing coach and leader. I've read Sacred Hoops and other things that he's written, and I just always pull something from things that I've read that he's done. Um, Probably a number of former sponsors and mentors that I've had, friends, just trusted advisors that we all, if we're lucky enough, we have people that we go to, safe spaces, because being a CEO or a leader, it's not limited to CEOs, CXOs, can be very lonely at times. And um, we all, I imagine, I know I do, I have a very deep accountability bead, and it's appropriate. I'm responsible for stewarding this organization, but it can be quite lonely, and we all need safe spaces to go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just had this conversation literally last night. I was talking to a few people and talked about the fact that by definition, leadership is lonely because to be a true leader, it often means that you are seeing things before other people see them, or you're going places before other people venture to go, or you're just by yourself making tough decisions that other people can't necessarily help you with. And you've got to have some sort of system or network to connect with people who can keep you balanced, keep you sane, keep you grounded. And I know that I've got a pretty strong accountability crew that I lean in on. They're all executive coaches, so we can all relate, and we practice on each other. So those same tough questions that you would get from your executive coach, oh my gosh, I can ask tough questions of other executives, but when those same questions come back at me, I don't appreciate it as much, right? So talk a little bit about, and you've already mentioned it, the value and the significance of having an accountability crew. They may or may not be in your same industry, but they might serve a role that you need so that you can still show up and make those decisions when it's only you in the room. What's the significance of an accountability crew?
So, a couple of different thoughts. First, they hold you accountable, in terms of sometimes well, I'll just speak for myself. I was going to say one, sometimes I'm sure I'm right about, something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And I have learned that when I'm that certain, I probably have a blind spot on it. And so for people that know me well, they can nicely, gently, and sometimes abruptly say, "Have you thought about X or Y?" And can just kind of broaden my perspective, and that's invaluable. Also, I have part of that accountability crew are my friends that will pull me off of work, because I am a workhorse, and so it's really important to have that balance to get away from whatever is so close, whatever you're devoting so much energy to, get away and go to a baseball game or go get some exercise, go walk your dogs, whatever it is, because that helps you reframe your perspective and keep things in context. And friends and an accountability circle can help you with that. It's wherever you have overused strengths or you have opportunities for growth, that accountability circle can help you.
I mean, that's so significant. And I love that you brought that into the conversation because if there's one thing that I can think of that has accelerated the work that I do, it's been the support of my accountability crew, for those very reasons that you shared. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Oh, I got to get you into the VIP room because my VIPs, they've got their noses pressed against the window because they know that I got to bring you in. But before we end this part of the conversation, what would you say would be one encouragement that you would give to maybe leaders who are still on the ascent? Maybe they're not sitting in the seat yet. Dave Peacock even said, hey, look, kind of enjoy the ride. Don't be so eager to get to the chair because, there's some things that you learn along the way and you're going to wish that you had this time back. But what are some things that you might encourage ascending leaders to consider, to invest in, to think about, so that when they get to that seat, they've got the tools in their toolbox that they might need to make some of those important decisions?
So I think the best advice that I could offer is everyone's job description has other duties as assigned or requested. Say yes.
Mm.
Absolutely say yes, because it's going to take you into places where you aren't normally in your role. And when you get to go into new places, it's just a giant landscape where you can learn. And I absolutely have had some of the most interesting assignments and growth opportunities by saying yes.
Ah. Well, guys, you heard it. I mean, I promised you in the beginning that this was going to be an amazing conversation. I not only did I promise you, I cracked open Colonel E.H. Taylor's small batch because I knew that this was going to be an amazing conversation. And Laura's over there drinking champagne. She knew that this was going to be worth celebrating. So we're going to bring you into the VIP room. And if you are not a VIP, gosh, I mean, it's like $5. It might even be, I think Audrey said we're $4 a month. We're $4 a month for extra conversation from each of these leaders. And you get to go all the way back to season 2 and hear special insight. And Laura was able to share all of this incredible insight for free. I can't imagine what we're going to get into on the other side. So if you're not a VIP, I don't know what else to tell you. But Laura, I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing and the fact that you're sharing your ministry with so many people. Because very often when we think of the word ministry, we think of a local church, a local parish, a small group of people. But you've been able to allow your ministry, allow your calling to impact significant numbers of people, not just the people in your organization, but the people who your organization is there to serve and to support. And I am just so excited that I get to continue to watch you and grow from your example. Continue to get to have you as someone who's going to return my phone call. So thank you so much for that. Any final words before we let go of the non-VIPs?
I just want to thank you, Galen, for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, because I've also so benefited from it, and all that you have done in your career and the leadership that you continue to share with all of us. Thank you. Keep going, and I'll be tuning in.
Fantastic. Well, raise your champagne, and I'm going to raise my E.H. Taylor. Until next time, cheers. Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.